Theo Foley offered me a pro contract a short while afterwards.
You were working for a bank or something in between times?
Yeah, I think it was 3 weeks. It was.
It was only a short time. As short a time as that.
My mate Pigeon and I, we signed up at the local, or not local, it was downtown in London, Threadneedle Street. Excuse me. We detested our jobs. Our job was to separate all the checks from the day before and put them in alphabetical order. And that was painful for 4 hours, 5 hours. That was our job every day for the first 2 weeks. And then I got a phone call from Charlton, from Les Gore, and saying, we need a goalkeeper for this afternoon. And that was my big break. I was playing for the youth team at the time, but I ended up playing only 4 or 5 reserve games and then went straight into the first team. I was very young. I was 17.
Yeah,
just under 17.
Now I think Theo Foley, sadly no longer with us. But Theo, you won't know this, but he was a guest of Bromley Addicts when his book came out only 2 or 3 years ago. So and somebody who we've all got had a great deal of time for, and nothing but good thoughts. A real gentleman. But I think he was important to you at that stage, wasn't he?
He was like a father figure to me. He was a father, an uncle, brother, best friend, and my coach. Fantastic, brilliant person, honest as the day's long, great attitude towards each and every one of us. He coached with love and care. He cared for each and every player. He wanted to develop a young Charlton team, come through the ranks, and his attitude was perfect for us. Mark Penfold, for example, Ray Tunbridge, Richie Bowman, all these lads, Les Berry. We was all coming through the youth squad, and Theo, he really cared enough to come to our youth games. I remember him watching me when I was about 13, 14 years old. So we went back a ways. He was on my side from day one.
Good, lovely. But Theo didn't stay very long, unfortunately. He got the shot, didn't he?
Yeah,
after you arrived.
It was no doubt that was very political, Ian, because I think it may have been some older players that were upset with things. But we weren't going down that season. I think we ended up just past midway on the positive side of the league. So we were really, Theo was building for the following season, which Andy Nelson got a lot of the benefits of Theo's signings.
Mm-hmm. Andy Nelson, a very different sort of person. How did you get on with him?
We weren't in love with each other, to say the least. He was a piece of work. He was total opposite of Theo. Our first meeting, team meeting, was full of do's and don'ts, and there was no room for an excuse. And I think that's great. There is no excuses, and if you have an excuse, you're not good enough. That at that level. So don't look for excuses. I learned that from him, and he was absolutely brutal on players. He would come 2 inches from your face, and Matt Easley told me evidently the Man United coach would do the same thing and scream at you where spit would all go over your face. And fortunately, I didn't get too much of that. But when it did happen, you had to be prepared and stand your ground. And he knew I looked straight through him, where some players, they just folded. He hurt some players, I think. And
that's very much behaviour of the time, isn't it, Graham? They'd never be able to behave like that with professional footballers now. It's the old Alex Ferguson screaming and throwing things around. Those days, I think, are largely in the past now, as far as you can judge it.
Yeah, it's sad to be threatened. He would say to Paddy Powell, would be a good example. take the fullback on 7 out of 10 times and beat him on the outside. Well, we all know beating someone on the outside is pretty difficult to do 5 out of 10. But he wanted it 7 out of 10. But it made, no doubt, Paddy a brilliant player through a little bit of fear. And he proved he had the ability to do it. But there were some players who just couldn't do what he wanted, and they disappeared fast.
That's interesting. Now, we all know it's a very glamorous job being a professional footballer. Tell us about Workington.
Funny, I was just talking to Matt Easley about Workington, a collaborator on the book. If you like rain and rheumatism, it's fantastic. I was up there 1 month and it didn't stop.
This was a loan, presumably.
Yeah, Theo had set that up before he left, and he said this would be a good experience for you. Now, Workington were bottom of the 4th division. I think they could have played the London Irish. They were on level terms. And Workington had a bad attitude. The players, they like to go for a beer on lunchtime on a Friday afternoon and stay there for 3 or 4 hours. It was a very depressing atmosphere, but it taught me so much. It taught me that I didn't want to play soccer at a 4th division level because it was too bloody difficult with the negativity of certain players feeling they weren't quite good enough, or they couldn't make the first team or go to the 2nd or 1st division. So there's a lot of frustration in the 3rd, 4th divisions, but I was pretty busy, as busy as the London Irish games, I can tell you.
Okay, now I think by the time you got into the first team, would have coincided with the promotion year, wouldn't it?
Yes, yeah, that was.
Tell us a bit about that, because there's not been that many promotion years at Charlton, so we like to enjoy them.
First of all, they're coming back, guys, girls. They're coming back.
That's the plan.
Hey, never give up. All right, never ever give up. We can be in the Championship. We can be in the Premier. All we have to do is do it, and we can. I think we got the right person on board. But what was that question again, Ian? I forgot.
Just tell us a bit about the promotion season, because that was when you were playing regularly, weren't you?
That was absolutely fantastic. It was my father's. Let me turn off this phone here. It was my father's 50th year of supporting Charlton, so we were very excited. For the family, the whole household was excited that we had a chance of going up. And I made my debut that year against Oldham Athletic. They went up with us and we beat them 4-1 at their place. So that was a real eye-opener in itself. But the highlight, I think, of the whole season was the last game. And as Matt Easley, my collaborator, said, he was there as a 10-year-old watching the game, and now he's in his 50s. And it was a game that you never, ever forget. It was a thriller. And we was 1-0 down at half-time. Harry Cripps went off injured. And then Peter Hunt came on. We had some terrific plays, and Derek, of course, he's notching goals. And we ended up beating Bobby Charlton's team, Preston North End, 3-1 at home. Valley totally rejoiced. We was all on the field together, jumping up and down. And just, it was a fantastic night. We really felt, and Palace was staying down, as I said earlier. And so it was a season that was unforgettable, absolutely unforgettable. And I'll forever treasure the players that I played with, because we played our hearts out, and a lot of the times we were the underdog. And that gives, I think we fed off that. We were supposed to, I remember we played that season as well, Queen's Park Rangers in the League Cup. and QPR was top of Division 1, the best team in England, top of Division 1. And everybody said, we're going to get crushed. Well, we went to Loftus Road. Stan Bowles scored their equaliser with 10 minutes to go. So we could have beat Queen's Park Rangers, the best team in the league, 1-0, besides the last 10 minutes. And then, unfortunately, we lost at the Valley. They really showed their stuff and beat us 3-0 at the Valley. But the good part about it was the crowd. There was I think it was 30,000 people came to that game. And it was back to the old Charlton days of the post-war or pre or post-war period, where big crowds were coming back to the Valley.
That's lovely, Graham. And I think when you're saying that everyone jumping up and down in the Preston game, I think that quite a lot of the people who are listening to you today were there jumping up and down at the Preston game as well, because of course many of us were there that day, and it's nice to hear.
You was there, Ian. You remember it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and at QPR as well. Yeah, remember them well. But I've kind of reached a point, I've got a few notes here. I've kind of reached the point where the next thing in my notes is the word Sunderland. So before we move on to that, have you got a call there, Graham?
That's right. It's the President, Biden. He's always wanting to advise.
Tell him to wait.
Sorry, I'm not very mechanically minded. I think I've turned it off.
Before we get on to Sunderland, perhaps I can swing over to Steve. And I know you've had a few questions. Have you had any questions on anything we've talked about so far that we can deal with before we go on to the Sunderland?
I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Bring it on.
What you got, Steve?
Well, there's a couple of questions, Graham.
Hi, Steve.
There was a photo, probably in the Mercury or something, of yourself and Johnny Harrison, who we think was about 5'3", and someone wants to know if you ever knew what happened to him. Did you keep in contact with him?
Yeah, Johnny Harrison. It's true. I don't think he was that tall. I think he was about 5'1". So with being 6'4", we look quite a sight on the same team. Johnny Harrison, great little right winger. Could weave in and out, obviously. He was like a Harlem Globetrotter player.
Would that have been the five-a-side tournament that you were playing in?
Oh, what, the London Evening Standard five-a-side?
I kind of remember that picture.
Yeah.
It was so little.
That picture we talked about with my arm outstretched like this, and poor little John was about 6 inches lower. That was down at the Valley.
Okay.
But I think what you might be talking about is when we played at the London Evening Standard, and we beat all the top clubs in London for the champion. Well, we played Millwall in the final, and we beat them. I think we knocked out Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal, all the big boys, because everyone underrated us. We was all young. The Richie Bowmans was playing Peter Hunt. Our oldest player back then was Keith Peacock. So that was a brilliant week, because we went up from the 3rd division and we won the London five-a-side, Evening Standard five-a-side.
I was there as well. I was there at the five-a-sides as well. Still got the programme.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Any more, Steve? Got any more from where we've got to now?
Yeah, try and avoid the Sunderland game.
Yeah, me too.
Are there any other players that you keep in touch with, Graham?
Sporadically, just word of mouth through friends, like the Mark Penfolds of the world, and wish Richie well for me, Richie Bowman, or say hello to Derek. My sister lives in Sittingbourne, and as you know, Housy's down in Sittingbourne, probably at the Billet pub. And so, he used to drop me off quite often after games at my sister's place. And I've got a lot of time for Derek. So if you do see him, tell him I'm looking forward to seeing him soon. And last time I was back at Charlton, He wanted to go out for a beer, but I just didn't have time. I had too many people around me, all our family, and I feel bad about that. Tell him, even to this day, 15 years on, I owe him a pint.
Have you got any good stories about Derek? Someone was asking.
He might do. I think with Derek, every day was a story. But there was one time we left Floyd Road. It was going up Floyd Road, in fact, and it was. We had a couple of beers. We weren't totally out of order, but you know how narrow that road is when you coming up and going down. Well, there was this car. We were flying up the hill, and this car, and then just glanced off our car. It was barely a tap. That's what we thought anyway. Except when we got to Sittingbourne, Derek couldn't open his door. The handle was gone. So, and I think that was a really innocent mistake on the driver's part, not Derek's part. No, there's plenty of stories, Derek, I could tell you, but there's way too many people in the audience. But you owe me that point. Yeah.
Let's move on. We'll come back with some more questions a bit later, Steve.
Okay.
We've got to talk about Sunderland, obviously, a key day in your life, but not one that you particularly want to remember, I'm sure. But tell us all about it because it's part of the story, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's very much part of the story. And Matt Eastley did a brilliant job getting into my head. And because you feel that you don't want to talk about, it's like coming back from Vietnam, those lads didn't want to talk about it much. And I didn't want to talk about it much, but Matt Eastley, he got into my head and asked the right questions. And that's why the book, I think, is as good as it is, because his vocab and his questions. But that day, it really all started 24 hours earlier. When we left, I think there's something, had this eerie feeling, and Matt covers this brilliantly in the book. How I had, it's almost like a premonition that something was not right, something was going to go terribly wrong. And from the moment we left the valley till kickoff time, there was some instances that happened that I talk about in the book, where it says about the strange lady who said she couldn't see the moon, and the moon was out that night. And it sounded really strange and weird at the time. But I remember after the accident, desperately wanting to look up and see a moon. And when I did look up and see the moon, I saw two of them. I had double vision. So it was a real education, that last 24 hours, of which was, I think, really neatly put together. It's bloody fun. I really believe that what happened at Sunderland was meant to be, because the way my life has unfolded since then, the adventure was just beginning when I got injured. Because as you'll read, when I was in South Africa, let me throw this phone out. When I was in South Africa, that was an adventure and a half.
Stick with Sunderland for now. We'd come to South Africa later.
Sure.
For the benefit of,
in the face is not fun, I can tell you that.
There's some younger people here who obviously weren't around at the time, so tell them as much as you can about what actually happened.
All right. Well, 7 minutes into the game, first of all, Sunderland was third from top, something like that. We were fifth, sixth from top, and it was a huge game. BBC One was covering the game, match of the day, supposedly over 50 million viewers, and it was a huge game for our club, because it was the barometer. It was the turning point. If we won this game, we could have possibly been third then, and in the run-in for promotion to Division 1. So it was a huge game for us. If Sunderland won, they would have been top of Division 2, and they were rocking and rolling. They were playing great. Bob Stokoe was their coach. Had a very good, decent team. Pop Robson, some great players on their side. So I was really looking forward to the game. It was basically a full house. I think it was about 35,000 screaming absolute lunatics, the Sunderland fans. Atmosphere, you could have cut it out. It was brilliant. 7 minutes, I didn't even hear the referee blow the whistle to start the game. That's how loud it was. 7 minutes into the game, the ball was knocked into the box, and just, I would say 3 or 4 yards from the penalty spot. And it was going to take a bounce, and then the guy was going to shoot. And so I read it. I felt good enough, well enough, where I shouted to Jimmy Giles, was our last defender, was our centre half. And I said, keeper's ball, and come flying out, full length, outstretched arms, gathered or caught the ball on the bounce and was bringing it into my chest. That was the last bit I somewhat remember as regards. Next thing, I felt a thud against my face, and it was their striker, Tom Finney, caught me just underneath the cheekbone. I was going down like this. He was coming across this way and shattered my cheekbone, broke my nose, broke the orbit of my eye up and down, split my eyelid, strained the muscles in my neck because of my head whiplashed. So I couldn't lift. I was laying on the ground and I couldn't lift my head up because it was, I just, the muscles had been strained in my neck. And then all of a sudden I saw a lot of blood dripping onto the dirt, about 8 yards, 7 yards out from goal, where the sort of dirty area is. Charlie Hall was our trainer, and he was like first on the scene. And I knew it was serious when Charlie shouted out, stretcher, get me a stretcher, and called the ambulance. That was, I knew just by that. And when they got me on the stretcher, Charlie, bless his heart, he wanted, because the cameras were there, BBC One, he wanted to stop the bleeding. So he squeezed my nose. And I've got a bit of a big nose to start off with, you know. But anyway, he squeezed my nose and the blood was then going down the back of my throat, and I started to choke on my own blood. And that was the scary time, because for about 30 seconds I couldn't breathe in or out. And you know, they say your life flashes in front of you. It did. It really did. Because all I kept thinking was breathe in or out, breathe in or out. So that was pretty scary part. And then the ambulance took me to Sunderland Infirmary, and they put me in. It was at first they put me in a what do they call it, a ward where women were pregnant, maternity ward. All their beds was full up. They couldn't put us in, but they decided, there was a couple of specialists there, doctors, and to put bags of ice. They felt it was very important to stop the bleeding, and to stop the throwing up blood, because it had gone into my stomach. And I don't drink Bloody Marys anymore, I tell you that. And it was a horrific moment, because I felt that I could have died. I felt on the verge, and at some point I could have easily given up. You know, it was a fight. It was a fight. It was a concussion as well, and my eyes were shut by then, so I couldn't see anything. I could only hear. And it's true what they say about a blind man. Your hearing becomes amplified, and I could hear everything that was going on, and it was bizarre. I heard Andy Nelson come into the players' emergency room off of the field, and Andy Nelson, all he wanted to know is if I was going back on, and the doctors said not today, and they basically took the piss out of him because that was not the right thing to say, you know.
How long were you in the hospital for, Graham, before you could go home?
It's on the Wednesday, I think. I came on. Rodney Stone,
Yeah.
secretary, fantastic guy. He stayed up there the whole time with me and brought me home on the Wednesday evening, I think it was. And it was shocking because they really didn't clean me up. I still had blood on my neck. And they didn't want, I suppose it was from insurance purposes or whatever, they didn't want to touch my face. They wanted specialists to reconstruct my cheekbone. And they put packing underneath here and pushed my cheekbone back and made me pretty again, straightened my nose a little bit.
By coincidence, a few weeks after the Sunderland game, I actually walked past you at the Valley, and I remember the bruising on your face. It was just horrific, you know. I mean, that really brought it home to me how bad it must have been for you.
Yeah, it's you know, it's a very tender area here, and the muscles of the lower eye, and there's a bone missing here. They were ruptured, and we were hoping that they were just severely bruised. But if I look at you now, there's two of you. If I look at you now, there's two.
And even still to this day, you've still got the double vision.
Yeah. It's great if you got £5 in your hand. You got 10, but or a beer and you got 2. But no, it's you train yourself. I trained myself to move my head, like the Wimbledon fans. I move my head more than my eyes, and I don't use my peripheral vision. If I'm driving a car and I look in my mirror, I won't look down at the mirror. I have to move my head and look at the other mirror, look up. You know, you just it's like looking through a periscope. So you had to learn to adjust, and that's what I did in South Africa. I had to figure it out. What was the best way? At first, I shut one eye, and then that wasn't working. So then you lose the depth perception.
Yeah.
So you can't close one eye. It was quite frustrating.
But in the immediate aftermath of the accident, or a few months later, when when the worst of it had sort of was charm player, of course, and a very young man with presumably ambitions to carry on your career as a footballer. I think you say in the book that in your heart of hearts you knew it wasn't right, but obviously you had to go through the pre-season training or whatever it was, and I think you said Andy Nelson was fairly blunt and to the point with you. Yeah.
Andy didn't mince his words. He well, it was the day before that crucified myself. We played, I think it was Cambridge away. It was a pre-season, or Hereford. It was a pre-season game.
Pre-season friendly, yeah.
Yeah, and it was, fortunately, it's behind closed doors. And very fortunate. It wasn't in front of a big crowd. It was Reading, I beg your pardon. And the first 10 minutes of the game, a ball was knocked through, and I came out to scoop it up, just a regular scoop, we call it, and it bounced off my shins and back into play. And I thought, well, that's a bit weird, a bit strange. Didn't feel right. I knew I wasn't quite right. I had problems. I was putting eye drops in my eye. It would be feeling very dry. And then I came for a cross, which I thought was mine, and that was my forte, coming for crosses. And I bashed into Jimmy Giles, our centre half, knocked him down, and a guy behind us just headed the ball home. And so the game wasn't going right for me at all. And then the last straw that broke the camel's back, guy hit a shot from about 25 yards, and it was only just above my head. So I had my hands up here, and I was looking at the wrong ball. It was the second ball up that went over my head and into the goal. I thought I called it, to be honest. So at the last 10 minutes of the game, I just wanted to hide, but there's nowhere to hide on a soccer field, you know. You just have to face it. And I knew it was coming. The next day at practice, as you alluded to, Andy Nelson was waiting for me outside the dressing rooms, and just said, "You finished, Tutty. That's it. We'll give you a testimonial, and all the best."
He doesn't come across as a great diplomat, Andy Nelson.
No, I think it'd be good to start in wars for sure. Yeah, there was lack of sincerity there, but you know, he was the type of guy that I think
he wasn't interested in letting a bit of time pass to see whether your vision settled down, or I mean, just to chop you out straight away like that seems almost a bit foolish, because he didn't know. Right. Things do get better with time, don't they?
That's what I was hoping, but back then, I felt like a bloody cow with a hook in my back. I just felt like dried, hung up meat. It was, and a lot of players. It was back then. There were some great players, and Peter Reeves is another good example. Another guy called Danny Jennings. He was in the youth. I think Danny Jennings could have played for England.
Yeah, he never played in the first team, though.
That's right. Yeah. Because he buggered up his knee in the reserves, and they were rushed him back, and he wasn't ready to come back, and he bugged his knee up permanently. And that was going on back then. Funny enough, I was just saying to my wife yesterday, players nowadays, they go to a specialist, and I should have been sent to an eye specialist and given a year and a half, 2 years. But the game was brutal. It was Billy Bremner, it was no prisoners taken, wallop.
So in that one flashing kick, your professional football career came to an end. Tell us a bit about the testimonial before we move on, because I think you had a rather strange all goalkeepers team or something, wasn't it?
Ian,
yes, Steve.
Before we move on to that, did Tom Finney ever contact you, apologise or anything at all?
Leave that one, Steve, because that comes up in the later stages of the book. So
we'll
get to that, but that's going to come up.
Okay.
Yeah, he came to see me in hospital. He did come to see me in hospital, and I wasn't too friendly towards him at the time. But you'll read later in the book. Yeah, and I don't want to give the end away.
Okay, well we won't talk
about. Please
don't
give the end away, guys.
Leave that bit. They won't buy the book otherwise. You see,
but it is quite sobering. And hopefully a good example for other people to follow. But I won't say any more than that.
No, tell us a bit about the testimonial. What's this goalkeepers team you had or something?
Well, this was a total surprise. I was over the moon with this. A goalkeepers 11 put together by Theo, I'm sure. And it was Pat Jennings, Bob Wilson, Jimmy Rimmer, John Jackson. I got a nice letter from Peter Bonetti. He was injured, he couldn't come. But these were all the top goalkeepers in London. Brentford's goalkeeper, Steve Death, I think his name was. So all the best and there's photographs on our website, and please look at it, as it mentions all the players, the goalkeepers that turned up. But the funny part was playing against Dennis Waterman's All-Star 11. And, Dennis is a character, good London lad. And he brought some fantastic personalities, disc jockeys, comedians. absolute bunch of Looney Tunes, but we all had a blast. It was the goalkeeper's 11. I felt totally honoured with, especially Pat Jennings, one of my heroes, and what a gentleman, and Bob Wilson as well. Brian Moore was on the board of directors of my testimonial, or on the board of advisors. Tony Gubber as well. There was some really prolific guys. I'm trying to think of the BBC. John Motson was involved, and in fact, he wrote the foreword of my book, or of our book. John Motson, because he covered the game, the Sunderland game, was a tremendous opening to the book, and so there's no fluff, no sugar.
Yeah.
It's as it, as he saw it.
So the testimonial, the game we've talked about with the goalkeepers, that was a sort of fun game, but there was actually a proper game with a Charlton side as well, wasn't there? I think they gave you a few minutes in that for a final farewell at the Valley.
Yeah, that the first 15 minutes of the game was played for Charlton and against the Sunderland team. Malcolm MacDonald was a guest player. Derek Howes had left the club and he was back at the club and played up front as well. And that was quite impressive. I'd say I only had 15 minutes. But what I do remember about the 15 minutes was at the kickoff where you go for the toss up. I had to run to the goal down at the shed end, and to hear all the Charlton fans singing my name was quite emotional, and it was for the last time. And that there was so much love and care from the Charlton fans. My dad always said, Charlton's a family club, and it is. It really is.
Well, before we leave Sunderland, a story which most people here will remember, but I wasn't at Sunderland on the day you got injured, but of course, because it was on television, we all saw it. And it was just an awful, awful foul. It wasn't just an accident, it was just a terrible foul. And how he didn't get sent off, I can't imagine. But it must have been a good 10 years later when Tom Finney came back to the Valley playing for Cambridge. And the second he walked out, when the teams came out, the second he touched the ball, he was booed by everyone in the Valley, and they booed him continuously every time he touched that ball for 90 minutes. And I remember at the time thinking how pleased I was that so many people remembered. You were gone, you weren't even in England then, but it just seemed as if everyone at least was still remembering you and what had happened to you.
Yeah, in fact, I got a phone call from a Charlton player, said that he'd done him in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
And part of me, I felt sorry for. It sounds crazy, but I felt sorry for Tom. I thought, you've ruined not only my career at Charlton, but you've done yourself in. And sure enough, he was a marked man, I think, and I think that must have affected his whole career, and it did, I'm sure, as you'll read in the book, the last part anyway. The guy must have carried a heavy weight in his head, as I had that shadow in the back of my head of wanting to forgive, but not finding it in my heart at the time.
Well, we're now in we're still in the late 70s. You're a very young man still. Your career at Charlton has come to an end. You've had your testimonial match, and you've now got to look at the rest of your life and say, what do I do next? I know you had a brother who'd moved out to live in South Africa. Presumably that was partly the reason you went out there, is it? Yeah.
In fact, my brother Jim, he emigrated for South Africa the day after I made my debut at the Valley against Oldham Athletic. And so he got to see me play one professional game before he moved to South Africa. Well, after the injury and after the testimonial, I've got a lot of publicity in our area. and I couldn't go anywhere down the local pub or just walking down the street. People would come up to me and say, Graham, I'm sorry about your eye. How is it? Let me have a look. Oh, gosh. And that got old very quick. And I didn't want to go out. Didn't want to go out anywhere. I stayed at home mainly for a month, 2-3 months. I don't know how long. And I got quite depressed about it. Just didn't want to go anywhere. Didn't want to be recognised or seen. And then realised, hey, let's get out of town. Mum needed a break. I needed a break. Dad was happy staying at home looking after the dogs. And we went to see my brother in South Africa. And it's a 1 in a million shot. An opportunity came back to me to play again.
And there's a Charlton connection here as well, isn't there?
Yes, yeah, Roy Matthews. Well, what's interesting is the way it all developed. I was down in a hotel in Uvongo, which was 2 hours south of Durban. And my brother picked a beautiful place for us to relax and get away. This hotel looked like David Niven would come, or Clark Gable would come round the corner. It was all marble, beautiful piano, full-size piano, king size. And we were in this hotel. We wanted to play snooker. There was a snooker table. My brother and I went down to play. The guy was Mr. Patel, his name, from India. He, a good lad. He was playing with the radio, and a soccer match came on, and it was in Zulu. We're in the sticks now. We're in the bush, right? The monkeys are swinging from the trees, and parrots are everywhere, right? Mr. Patel stopped on the channel for a second, and it was definitely a soccer match was going on, and being in Zulu was quite funny. And I said to Dad, "Well, listen, let's listen to it." I said, "I know Zulu, don't worry." I know it. So we listened to it a little bit. And Mr. Patel, I said to him, "Who is your team?" He said, "My team is Arcadia Shepherds." And I said, "Roy Matthews, do you know Roy Matthews?" Because I heard Roy Matthews played and coached at Arcadia. And he said, "Yes, very good man." He said, "But bad season this season, bad season." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Their goalkeeper, Trevor Gethin, is retired." And Trevor Gethin was their Pat Jennings. He was a fantastic goalkeeper, superb goalkeeper. And he played up until he was like 49. He was a Stanley Matthews goalkeeper ahead of his time. Spurs wanted to sign him. So that tells you what a great goalkeeper he was. He ended up my coach that I talk about in the book as well. But
just interrupting you for a second there, Graham, having not been able to play in England, okay, I know it's semi-pro and it's a lower standard of football in South Africa, but how were you as a goalkeeper? You still got your double vision. How were you able to entertain playing again?
Well, they say fake it until you make it, and I think I was doing that. I wasn't quite. The first season in South Africa was not a great one for me because I was still trying to sort out my technique of really seeing the ball and setting up before I take a dive. My fitness level was not good. I don't think I was match fit when I arrived because I was playing for Faversham Town for a spell just to get fit, and that wasn't good enough. That wasn't demanding enough. And I found that where I was at was not a comfortable time. And I knew something had to happen. Fortunately, I had a 2-year contract. There was no cut. So they couldn't get rid of me if they wanted. So towards the end of that first season, I was worried. I went to a specialist. Excuse me. And the specialist recommended I play a lot of racquetball or squash. and also table tennis, ping pong, and regular tennis. He said you need to get your eye working, and also get in the ocean. And that's why we was in Durban. That's why we was in the South Coast, swimming, in nice warm water, opening my eyes for the salt water, hoping that would improve the muscle of my eye and free it as such. It just felt like it was locked in certain positions. And so anyway, going back to Mr. Patel, and it's a worthwhile story. I told him about Roy Matthews, and he said, Roy's there. And then he said about the goalkeeper situation at Arcadia Shepherds is bad. So it wasn't working for whoever was the goalkeeper at the time. So my brother said, looks like they need a new goalkeeper, son. Typical London lad, my brother. And I said, well, we could give Roy a call in the morning. And he said, yep, we'll call Roy in the morning. And with that, we went on, played pool or snooker with one eye. But then I called Roy in the morning, and he said, can you come to Pretoria? I said, absolutely, I can be there today. And he said, well, we're practicing tonight. So I left that morning after speaking with him, drove 6-7 hours. I stopped in Durban, bought a pair of soccer boots, socks, long socks, shorts, and a goalie shirt. I didn't even have my gear. And drove another 6 hours up to Arcadia, which is located in Pretoria, next to Joburg. And my trial was that night with Kai Johansson, the coach of Arcadia. He played for Glasgow Rangers, Kai Johansson, back in the 60s. So it was an opportunity that I knew would come once in a lifetime for me to play again. And fortunately, the trial, well, Kai Johansson, let's go back up a little bit, the head coach, he was on the field just closing practice down. And because they lost the night before to the game I was listening to, Amazulu, they got beaten by a bunch of Zulus, evidently. And incidentally, the standard was pretty good over there. Jerry Queen, I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
He played. Jerry played on our team. And he former Crystal Palace lad. A lot of Johnny Haynes went out there years ago. A lot of British players, Johnny Sissons from West Ham. A lot of South Africans, as you know, came to Charlton as well. So there was a relationship going on. Mm. But the tryout as such was really the next night. But because I got there so late, it was just Kai Johansson and myself. And he said he'll hit a few balls at me, and see what I can do. And that was, I think, extremely well represented by Matt Eastley in the book, because it was the do or die time. He was the coach, and he knew that I had an eye problem, and I had to hide it, and I had to pull off some saves, and this guy could hit the ball. He was known for scoring the Glasgow Rangers winning goal in the Scottish FA Cup final. So, and from 30 yards. So this guy was no mug. He could hit a ball, Kai Johansson. And he's a Danish international. And he started striking the ball from 25 yards to really test me. And there was one particular save that just really stood out in my mind. I knew it was going to happen. It was almost like a premonition that he was going to go top left-hand corner. And I just threw myself up in the air as far as I could go, 4 or 5 feet off the ground, got a touch to the ball over the bar. And he said, he swore at me. He's like, you lucky bastard, or something like that. And I knew I had a contract because it was such a great save. And then it's the next night there was a practice match, the Arcadia first team versus the reserves, and he put me on the reserve team, and I was really fortunate. I made some early on saves, and then after half an hour, the heavens opened up. It was a monsoon. It rained so hard it hurt, like it was like pellets hitting you. And it was exciting time because I knew in that half an hour I had to prove myself. And one of the saves I had to make was diving at someone's feet. And as soon as I dove at the fella's feet and gathered the ball up, I got up, looked over towards both Roy Matthews and Kai Johansson, and both of them had their thumbs up. So I knew that there was a contract coming. That was my had to pass the grade save. And
how did you feel mentally having to dive at somebody's feet in at that time? I mean, you must have had your own doubts, I should have thought.
Yeah, for sure. It's why get kicked in the head again?
Yeah,
that hurts.
Yeah.
But there comes a point where if you're going to be called a professional goalkeeper, you got to do it.
Well, we all know goalkeepers are crazy anyway, aren't they, Graham?
Yeah, well, they say that. They say that all goalkeepers. I don't know. I think we're highly intelligent and just don't know it. No.
How long did you play? How long did you play for Arcadia Shepherds? A couple of seasons, or what was it?
2 seasons there.
Yeah.
And in the second season, I had a fantastic coach, the former Arcadia goalkeeper, Trevor Gethin. And Trevor worked me to death. He worked me very hard. And, just pressure training all the time for an hour and a half. Usually you do pressure drills for 10, 15 minutes out of the 45 minutes to an hour of the session. Well, Trevor was all about pressure training for an hour and a half. And he got me as fit as I was when I was playing at Charlton. I felt great again. And I was selected for the South African All-Star team to play a USA All-Star team. And I was feel very honoured and humbled by that. But I couldn't play in the game because we had one more league game and we had a chance of winning the league. So I had to put club before playing for an all-star team that would have got me a contract. But as it turned out, that worked to my advantage, putting club before the all-star team. And someone put a word in for me.
I've scribbled down in my notes witch doctor. I think there was a anecdote in the book about a witch doctor. Do you want to share that one with us?
I think this is Matt Eastley's, a collaborator, his favourite part of the book. Matt enjoys this. True story. We were playing in a place called Windhoek, and it was only a couple of hours from Joburg, and the plane we went on was a I would say during the World War II it was made, like a parachute plane. It didn't have seats where they normally are. They had them going down the side and you leant up against the fuselage. This was a low budget airlines, I think. Well, anyway, we was going over the Kalahari Desert, and the Kalahari Desert goes on for a long, long way. And it has lots of peaks and valleys as regards sand dunes. And the sand dunes create so much heat coming off that the heat waves coming off, it made the plane shake for the whole 2-hour flight. And within 10 minutes, there wasn't one player that was not throwing up. We were all throwing up. So we got to Windhoek, dehydrated 2.5 hours later, knees wobbly, shaking, and we play on a field that, and this was a goodwill game. This was set up by Kai Johansson, our coach, he wanted to develop the game and the league to help. And so this was not a regular league game. This was an exhibition game. And so the Vintook All-Stars, they were called. And anyway, just before the game, and I've got to say this, the field was rolled flat dirt. So it was like playing on sand after a spell. It just got very uneven. And the goal was 7 foot at one end and 8 foot at the other. So you had a slight, the nets were handmade. Anyway, so I'm warming up before the game. Jerry Queen was warming me up. And all of a sudden there was a witch doctor standing in front of us and jumping up and down with bones through his nose, through his ears, totally doing his thing. All I could do was stand there, and with Jerry, my jaw was on the ground. I was like, what is this guy doing? And then all of a sudden he brought from behind his back, it was a chicken. I knew it was a dead chicken because the head was off, the head was missing. So he was waving this chicken around, blood all over the 6-yard box. So I didn't like the idea of diving on blood. So with my foot, I started scraping the dust, the dirt over the blood. Well, the witch doctor went absolutely ape. He went absolutely crazy. No, and all this sort of stuff. And I just backed off and said, I'm sorry. I didn't want to be tomorrow's breakfast or dinner, I didn't know. And the witch doctor, he went, none of that. And that was an experience, to be face to face with a witch doctor.
For sure.
Not knowing if he was going to be a friendly witch doctor or on the menu.
Well, yeah, or a cooking pot type. Now, you were out in South Africa at the height of apartheid, so you must have had some experiences of that.
Yeah, apartheid. I couldn't even spell it when I went out there. It was ugly. It was, what I saw was not a good example of how people should be treated. Total suppression, total school ground bully. There was several examples I can give that are in the book that is just hair raising, absolutely hair raising, and quite understandably so. The blacks outnumbered the whites 7-1, and the whites, with the Afrikaners, were telling the blacks where to live, how to live, and to be out of the town before 7 o'clock at night. They had to have a pass. Well, I invited our garden boy, his name was Flash, to come to one of our home games. He was an Arcadia Shepherds fan. He washed my car, and he wouldn't take money for washing my car, and he just loved chatting, talking Arcadia Shepherds soccer. So I said to him, I got tickets for you for the game. Come on, I'll take you to the game, and there'll be a couple of players with me, and afterwards I'll drop you off at your bus station or whatever, because the blacks had to live in a township, or they called it location. Well, after the game, I said to Flash, "Are you hungry?" He said, "Yeah." So he was excited about having something to eat. So I went into a burger place that is whites only. He sat in the car, in the back of my car. And I went in to get the burgers. When I came out, the Afrikaan police were beating the crap out of him with whips, with their sticks. And I said, whoa, he's with me. He's a good lad. He's a good guy. They said, I gave him tickets to the game. I'm taking him home. I said, what's the problem? And the Afrikaan policeman said, he hasn't got a pass. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he's got to have a pass to be in town, in Pretoria, after 7 o'clock. Well, obviously he didn't have a pass. They beat the crap out of him. Then the policeman said, we're going to put him in jail because he hasn't got a pass. And I said, come on, no, let's not get stupid with this, And the African policeman says, you'll be thrown in jail because you're obstructing obstructing the law or obstruction. And it even to this day upsets me because he was beaten to near death, the poor fella. And that's the way they treated the blacks over there. If you haven't got a pass, we'll beat you up and you'll be thrown in jail. And I was very uncomfortable, really uncomfortable with how they were treating the black. I had a cleaning girl that came into my apartment 3 times a week, did the washing and dusting and cooked breakfast. I said to her, do you see problems in South Africa between the blacks and the whites being 7-1? And she said, oh yeah. She said, whites will be killed. I said, would you kill me like this? And she said, no, but my brother will. I went, oh, okay. And then a couple of games, I had a screwdriver thrown at me and it landed by my right foot in the ground. I thought that could have been the back of my head. That could have been my back or wherever. And a screwdriver, that would hurt. And then we were playing a team down in Port Elizabeth, good team. But as I was coming up the tunnel after the game, a spear as such, it was bamboo, sharpened bamboo, was poked at me and hit my shoulder, bounced off my shoulder. I thought, that's it, I'm done. I've got to go and play in America. Someone's going to get killed. Someone's going to get hurt.
Before we move on to America, any questions up to sort of South Africa or anything else at this point, Steve, before we go into America?
Well, there's one from Callum, and I'll read it as it says because I'm not 100% sure what he means personally. But he says, Graham, do you feel as though reflecting on your experience in 1976 through the writing of the book helped you more than other ways?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I can honestly say I had this shadow in the back of my head, and Matt Eastley was tremendously helpful there because he saw the video of it. He works for the BBC, and he saw what happened. And as he said, he felt that it wasn't intentional. A lot of people have said that it was intentional, and a lot of people said, I'm in between Matt's theory of it, but it wasn't intentional, and it wasn't. I think it was a bull in a china shop, to be honest. And he was trying his best. He hadn't scored. He was striker. Was bought for $100,000 or pounds, and he hadn't performed to his ability or what they thought was going to be his ability, and he hadn't scored goals. So, he was trying to make something work or something happen out of nothing. And that's what I came to terms with, that it was just a bull in a china shop and a guy that had no brakes, was a little bit reckless, but in the same breath, I had no fear either. I would dive at people's feet week after week and think nothing of it. You just hoped that they would jump over you. That was the common thing back in the day, especially if you shouted out keeper and then you went down. That was a hop, skip and a jump for them. And and he didn't do that. So that was the disappointing part about pulling the china shop part. But I'm sure he didn't have in his head, as Matt Eastley said, didn't have in his head that he was going to kick me that day.
May I just quickly come in there, actually, if you don't mind?
Oh, Matt Eastley.
Yeah. Sorry, Graham. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, gentlemen. I hope you don't mind me. And
please do.
Because I've actually I got the footage of the match today, and I've watched it so many times, as you can imagine, over and over again. I did hear what you said. You said, Ian, and the common perception, I think, is that Tom Finney, in footballing parlance, did Graham. You know, I've watched it about 20 times. I think it was like an irresponsible, reckless hack at the ball. My own perception of it, and I can only say it, is that it wasn't deliberate. And there's a very big difference between that. It was a reckless, horribly reckless challenge. I don't think he went to hurt him, which is a very, very different thing. And much as I'm, great friend of Graham and I respect, I mean, but that's my completely objective viewpoint of that particular incident, is that it was a terrible fly hack. He should have pulled out. It was very different. I don't think Tom went to do Graham, and it's an absolutely critical element of this whole story, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, we only got to see it once. There was no, videos and stuff of it, but we just saw it once on Match of the Day, and that was certainly what I felt at the time. But if you've watched it 20 times, then quite clearly,
well, I can understand that, Ian, and I can really understand it. I totally respect your opinion on it. It's incredible. The other thing that struck me about watching it was incredibly quick. It all happened incredibly quickly. It was a ball that was, you see him 100 times in a football match, breaking loose in the box. And it happened in the blink of an eye. I think Tom hugely regrets it, but I don't think Tom Finney. I don't think he did it deliberately, but I think it was horribly reckless.
It's an interesting point here because Paul Elliott, who was a centre half at Charlton a little while later, his career was brought to a premature end when he had a very bad injury to I think it was his knee, which was from a very bad foul. And he sued the player, whose name escapes me for the moment, but he sued him through the courts for negligence, looking for compensation. And he actually lost the court case. And he lost it on the grounds that the judge ruled that for it to be negligent in law, it had to be deliberately to hurt, as opposed to just a really bad tackle. And if you're going to play a game like football, which is by its nature a contact sport, there is a risk of injury. And it's a very fine line, but in Paul Elliott's case, it failed and he lost the case. Although a later Charlton player, I'm doing this from memory, Matt Holmes, I think it was Matty Holmes, who also had his had a similar thing, and he actually won his case and did get compensation.
Yeah, it was Muscat, wasn't it, at Wolves?
That's right, Muscat. Yeah, I say I hadn't prepared any of this. I'm just doing it out of my head, but I think that's right. But certainly Elliott's one. It was the fine line between negligence and just a bad tackle.
Yeah.
And that was the difference.
I think Finney had a reputation in the game, didn't he, Graham? I think there was a perception that Finney might have done it before, but
goalkeeper at Southend got kicked in the stomach by him a few weeks before, so he came in with a bit of a track record, So I think that didn't help his case.
No. Well, the notes I've got here, my next question was going to be, what made you leave South Africa and go to America? But you've kind of already answered that. I presume it was the apartheid situation that made you feel that your long-term future was probably not out there. Is that how it was?
Yeah, well, I really didn't finish the story on the Windhoek game, but you've got to read that part, because that was the fastest 50 yards I've ever run to catch a bus on the move while a riot was going on, and we were this close to getting to being on the menu that night. It was, Carry on, Ian. What was the next?
Anyway, you ended up in Atlanta, Georgia. What made you go to Atlanta?
Well, at first I wasn't going to come to here. When I left South Africa, I went home to England for a spell. I was needed there. My sister was going through a tough time with her children, a divorce. We all needed to sort of regroup the wagons as such, circle the wagons. And Then I got a phone call from Tony. Gosh, he was the Whitecaps owner. Whitecaps in Vancouver Whitecaps.
Yeah.
Tony Wakers. I couldn't remember his name.
Blackpool goalkeeper.
That's right, Blackpool, and he was a real nice chap. And Bruce Grobler was just going to Crewe and then on to Liverpool, and he'd just left the club and he was in need of a goalkeeper. And Phil Parks, the Wolves goalkeeper, he was there as well. And Phil Parks was trying to negotiate a new contract because they won the Soccer Bowl the year before, which was big time stuff. So this was a top club in this country or in Canada. But I didn't like when I got to the Whitecaps. I didn't enjoy it. They played on AstroTurf, which was about a quarter of an inch thick, and the turf, it had snowed and iced over that day. It was more like a skating rink than it was a soccer field. And the second day I was there, I broke my finger. I liked Tony, but I didn't like the location, didn't like the club. I didn't like the bloody cold. Coming from South Africa as well, I mean, it was sub-zero. You just stood there and froze to death. So I knew it wasn't for me. So we shook hands and we said, there's something better for me, and which was Columbus, Ohio. Keith Peacock played for them the season before, and they went to the final. And Keith was a player assistant coach to Paul Taylor, who's the head coach. Well, Keith recommended me to Paul, and next thing I know, I'm in Columbus, Ohio, playing on bloody AstroTurf again, but it was a little bit thicker. But it was in the ASL, and it didn't make sense. We were playing all over the place. You'd have 5 games down the East Coast, and then 5 games on the West Coast, because the league was split up. It was about 18, 20 teams, but they was at different ends of the world. And you guys know how big America is. When you went on a away trip, you went on a away trip for 12, 15 days. It's not like English soccer. And therefore, it's very expensive to run a franchise when you're flying everywhere, to New York, to Tampa, to Vancouver. So that team, Columbus, folded, and we got to the final again when the owners they changed hands 3/4 of the way through the season, and evidently the South African owners, new owners, wanted to get money out of the country, out of South Africa, and they used that as an excuse to buy a franchise in America. Well, they took off with their money, and I had a knock on my apartment door saying the rent hadn't been paid for the last 2 months, and also my car rental hadn't been paid, and so the Columbus Magic basically disappeared overnight. Is the caption there? So I thought, what am I going to do now? And then it froze a bit. After Columbus, Atlanta Chiefs came in for me. They were looking for a goalkeeper, and they were rebuilding their team. And the assistant coach I knew well, because we played against each other when I was at Columbus. He was the coach up in Sacramento, Bill Williams. In fact, Bill Williams, you may know, is at Maidstone, or he was for years as a general manager.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I think he's still there, and he's done a wonderful job. And Bill recommended me to Dave Chadwick, who played for Southampton previously, and over here with the Dallas Tornadoes and Fort Lauderdale Strikers. So I liked the coach, Dave Chadwick, Chaddy, straight off the bat, and Bill Williams I've always liked. So I came and played for the Atlanta team back in 1981.
Well, funny enough, I actually went out to the States in 79 and 80, and I watched a couple of them. I didn't see you play, but I saw the Memphis Rogues play when I was in Memphis, and I saw Toronto Blizzard. So
Yeah.
I do understand a lot of what you're talking about, and it was quite for people that didn't have that privilege at the time. It was a most amazing experience. There were quite big crowds, and they're all in big stadiums, like Premier League type stadiums. Yeah. But it was played in the summer, and I just couldn't get used to it. Everyone was sitting there in t-shirts, eating slices of pizza and drinking Cokes while the game was going on. None of them understood the laws of the game, and they certainly didn't know what the offside rule was. But it was. But there were some good players out there, weren't there?
You're right.
Players out there.
Yeah, you're right, Ian. I remember the crowds clapping when we had a free kick 40 yards out, because they were thinking like American football.
Yeah.
You kick the ball over the bar, you get a couple of points. And nobody, like George Best came to town, Gerd Muller, Johan Cruyff. They're all great players we played against here in Atlanta. When they was introduced, hardly anybody clapped, because they didn't know Johan Cruyff, Gerd Muller, you know.
Mm. It was a weird setup, and I mean, well, obviously they've got it right now, because the only way for a sport to grow is to grow it through the schools and the colleges and grow upwards. It was like a tree with no roots, wasn't it? At the time you were there, they'd implanted top players, but there was nothing underneath, and the audiences didn't understand what they were watching.
Yeah, our stadium is a 55,000 seat stadium, of which we filled 10,000 seats.
Yeah.
So it looked out of place. It just we were before our time. And
I believe you saved a penalty against George Best. Is that right?
I did for 3 seconds. It was a retake.
Oh.
The referee, he's a British referee, Gordon Hill. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
Gordon Hill, player.
Referee.
Yeah, good referee, funny referee. He gave the penalty, and I guessed right. I went the right way, got a touch to it, went round the post, and the referee says, "Retake, you moved." I said, "Oh, come on, not against George Best." He says, "Well, it is George Best," he said. So it was almost like he needs another chance, you know, because he sent me the wrong way on the second penalty kick. But it was a good experience. He was a great player, even drunk, and that's what one of the lads, our left defender, he said, "I'm sure I can smell beer on his breath." And I said, "Well, that's the way he rolled." But he was doing tremendous stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. He could still take on players, beat them, body swerve, nutmegs. You know, one of our players, he just said, if I could catch him, I'll kick him. But I can't catch him. And he was a lovely fella. He was just such a tragedy.
And now I think, because obviously this, I guess, wasn't a full-time occupation for you. You took a job, I think, initially as a car salesman. Had a go at that?
Yeah. This is when the season finished, and I had nothing to do, and our club had folded. I'd bought a house on a golf course, a lovely place out in the sticks, and I wanted to stay in Atlanta. And a mate of mine, he owned a Lincoln dealership, and he said, "You'll be a good PR guy. All what you do is talk to people and give your card and invite them to come to the dealership." I thought, "Oh, I can do that," you know. And when we were bored, we would take the Lincolns out and do figure eights in this huge parking lot for nothing to do, you know, with goalkeeper stuff. Anyway, I was there for 3 months. He drove me nuts. 3 weeks rather. Fortunately, it drove me back into the soccer business, and there's a local college called Kennesaw College. I approached them about running a soccer camp, and then I quit the car job and went into the schools, the middle schools, elementary schools, high schools, and did free soccer clinics and gave my camp brochure out and some sponsored T-shirts by a local radio company. Well, after about 3 months and 50 schools, we ended up with 700 kids coming to the camp. So I had to find coaches for all these kids because I can't coach 700 at one time. So it was 700 over 3 weeks. So it's just over 200 a week. But then I realized this could be a business. So I opened it up to run a soccer camp business. And then shortly after, a roller rink my friend purchased, we converted that into an indoor soccer arena. And then a 26-acre soccer complex for kids, of which 2,000 kids play there today. It's a non-profit organisation.
You're still running. You still got it today, have you?
I made it a non-profit and
Yeah.
handed it over to the parents.
Oh, okay.
I found a lot of the parents felt, I'm sure, that I was making a fortune, making a killing, and I was working myself to death, trying to line the fields, cut the grass, coach teams, and schedule the games. It was not easy, but I wanted to develop it for kids, and so we got 700 kids that first season, and never looked back. It was fun. I left there shortly afterwards to run an indoor pro team in Atlanta.
This has been such an interesting session that the time's kind of run away with us. I didn't realise how late it was, and I think we're going to have to wrap things up shortly. I'm not going to talk about Tom Finney anymore because I think, frankly, we've given you enough tidbits from the book that you need to all get a copy. I've sort of skim-read mine, but I will be reading it in full detail. Yeah, we've all got one.
Yeah, all right. It's a great picture. Great picture here. Funny enough, this is against Sunderland. Can you believe it?
Yeah. We'll leave the last part of Tom Finney at the end of the book for you, so as not to spoil the ending. But I hope you will all make the effort to get it. It is a good read. I mean, Tony's already given it a good commercial, but I certainly agree with him. 1 or 2 questions left, Steve, before we wrap it up.
We've covered them all, really.
We've covered them all. Okay, in which case, I think we'll say thank you. First of all, thank you to Graham for a most interesting session, and to Matt for coming down and being there in the background to keep us on the straight and narrow. And a thank you to Lucy for coming down for the first time to the Bromley Addicts. I hope we'll see you again as well. And then thank you to all the rest of you. We're reaching a point now where it looks like Boris is going to let us go out to play soon. So hopefully it won't be too long before we can have live sessions. But I think we're going to look very closely at perhaps doing them intermingled with Zoom.
Yeah.
Because there are obviously guests who wouldn't be available if we'd said to Graham, come and talk to us about your book. We're in Pets Wood. I think that might have proved logistically difficult. So there are lots of examples where the meetings of this type, are worth having. But obviously, we'd also like to have live ones. And Alan Kirbishley's on a promise that he will come and talk to us in person as soon as we're able to do so. He doesn't like doing the Zoom ones, and that's about it, I think. So thank you all for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And remember, Bromley Addicts always have the best guests.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Ian. Please cheer on the lads.
Let's go.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Premiership, here we come.
That's it.
Thank you very much, Buster.
God bless.
Bye.
Very much.
Okay. All right. No, that was a good evening. Very good.
Excellent. That was good.
Very grateful for Graham coming on. It's it's a great book. You should get it, honestly.
Yeah. No, I've read it. It's brilliant.
Oh, you have already. Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'll let people drift off, and then I'll end the meeting.
Cheers, Tone.
All right. Cheers, Kevin.
Good evening.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, sir.
Thank
See
you.
you,
Cheers.
Richard. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
But they're all going. It's only you.
Yeah.
Only
Yeah.
you left, Ian.
Yeah, that's all right. That was, well, okay, wasn't it? I think.
Oh, it was good. Yeah, yeah. Funny enough, he phoned. He came on when he phoned me yesterday to say, "Is it still on?" And I said, "Of course it is." We had one of these face to faces, and then he came on about an hour before we started just to say, "Oh, sorry, I'm on early." He's a good lad, isn't he? He's very,
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. That was,
he came from Brockley. I didn't realise he actually.
yeah.
How you doing, Miles? All right. Good to see you.
He's muted. He can't speak.
You're muted, Miles.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, Miles.
It's all over now, but Daddy missed 2 meetings because he missed the Chris Powell one and the owner because someone we couldn't get on.
Oh, right, okay.
But
Oh, well,
yeah,
you made it this time anyway.
yeah. How is everyone? I've missed you all.
Yeah, we'll be back soon. We'll be back at Petswood soon, we hope.
Yeah.
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 Well, and we're back in League One. We're back playing in League One again.
That's it. That's it.
So us old folks called it the third division, don't we?
We got some good game. We got Cheltenham and Wickham and Rotherham. There's some good teams.
Yeah. And on that happy note, I will say good night to you all.
Right. Good night, Ian.
Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
I'm going to close the meeting. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.